Horizon Zero Dawn was my favourite game of 2017. In it, we followed tribal outcast Aloy as she discovered her intrinsic link to the restoration of life on Earth post the apocalypse, and of how it would be her duty to protect the planet from another untimely demise. Doing all this while fending off deadly animalistic machines and murderous bandits. Earlier this year, Guerrilla Games released the sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West is one of those beautifully rare games where I just couldn't get enough of it. After I beat its story and earned the Platinum Trophy, I proceeded to get 100% game completion, and then went and beat all of the Machine Strike players. I even did something that I never did in my 2 playthroughs of Zero Dawn and went back to find every data point and known Easter egg. I spent more time in photo mode and took more in-game screenshots than I ever have in any video game ever. And so, if you would indulge me, I would like to go into detail of as to why I love Horizon Forbidden West. In the time of the Old Ones, 1,000 years prior, there was this huge conflict between humanity and Ted Faro's biomass-consuming machines. In Zero Dawn, we learnt about Operation Enduring Victory, where every American was armed and tasked with fending off the Faro plague. There are a lot of references to a huge theatre of war taking place on America's west coast. So going into Forbidden West, I was so fascinated by the idea of seeing how Guerrilla Games would depict the remnants of this centuries-old conflict. After you cross through Barren Light and enter into the Forbidden West, you see the corpses of corruptors fighting against rusted, sand-drenched tanks, while the carcasses of massive horses lie beached in the ground with their metallic tentacles reaching out across the landscape. As with what we saw in Zero Dawn, nature has reclaimed the human structures of old, but in the West, the buildings are far more battered and bruised, having been forced to endure a far more sustained conflict. As you explore with Aloy, you see more of these relics, coming across the black boxes of fallen planes, their contents bearing stories of hope, courage, and tragedy.
It won't shut down! The swarms hacked us! Terrain, pull up.
And if you delve deeper into the remains of the Old Ones, you'll find recordings and journals documenting moments of the lives of people, some of them aware of their impending doom. Others just trying to lead a normal life. A daughter going camping with her father. A musical radio astronomer. A man from Hawaii forced from his home by climate change opening up a restaurant in a revitalized Las Vegas. Horizon's setting is one of the things that I love most about it. It's sci-fi, but through the lens of historical discovery. This new age of humanity didn't get the opportunity to learn about the advancements that had been made in a time before their own. So when Aloy finds a data point or uncovers more about what life was like, it feels like finding primary and secondary sources of history. But as a player, that history is in the future. I just love learning about this world through this particular lens. This relationship between science fiction and historical discovery can be clearly seen in the game's core narrative, which sees Aloy coming face to face with immortalized Old Ones bearing highly futuristic technology. With Forbidden West, I've experienced something that I so rarely experience, and that is a main quest line where I can recount, down to specific details, each sequence, beat for beat. For me, it's this amazing phenomenon where I have such a vivid recollection of everything that happened. From Aloy searching the Farzine facility for another copy of Gaia, to fetching all the subordinate functions and what that entailed, all the way to the discovery of Nemesis. Part of me just wants to do a segment of this video where I recount every little detail from the story that I can remember. But instead of covering shocking massacres, tense encounters with Farzinettes, or finding out what really happened to Ted Faro, I want to talk about one quest in particular. That being the one that takes us to the ruins of Las Vegas in order to find Poseidon, the subordinate function in charge of helping Gaia regulate Earth's water systems. This is one of the most, if not the most, beautiful sequences of the entire game. I want to talk about not just this wonderful chapter, but also what I experienced leading up to and around the events of this particular quest. Starting off with the side quest Signal Spike, to the north of the Vegas ruins. In this side quest, Aloy helps an Oseram tinkerer, Silga, who is trying to hear a message from the Old Ones. In order to help, Aloy has to climb up to fantastic vistas in order to reacquire the lost signal. But apart from the fantastic views that this quest introduces you to, the most memorable part for me was seeing how Aloy interacted with Silga. We know that Aloy, being a clone of Elizabeth Sobek, is someone who is very good at figuring out how things work. She's quite technically minded, and so when she interacts with Silga, who in many ways shares similar personality traits and interests with Aloy, we kind of see this little sparkle in Aloy's beautifully rendered eye.
Your rig's impressive. How does it work?
To an extent that the two women quietly bond with one another. We see this kind of interaction pop up again at the start of the Poseidon quest, when Aloy meets Morlund, Abadant, and Stemmer. Morlund is trying to find a way to descend into this Old One's casino complex that is now completely underwater. Here, Aloy and Morlund enjoy this beautiful moment of shared interest and engineering know-how.
With a hose to a
Compressed air capsule, hammer, and tongs.
What is this? What is happening here? What? Get over here.
Throughout both Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, so many of the characters Aloy encounters refer to her as Outcast, Champion, Savior, Ancestor, Warrior. Aloy spent her childhood as an outcast, and then grew up to find that the weight of the world was on her shoulders. This is a character who is very used to having to solve problems by herself, hence why she chats to herself so much. The core of her character journey in Forbidden West is learning that she can accept help. So, on a larger scale, it's wonderful when the likes of Varl and Erend convince her that it's safe to let others in, but on a smaller scale, it's such a pleasure to see Aloy discover this herself with the likes of Silga, Morlund, Petra, and Talana, characters who bypass her at times frosty exterior and find the inner child within. After helping Morlund find the parts for a rebreather, allowing Aloy to swim underwater for as long as she likes, she descends into this stunningly lit underwater complex. Upon entering a large atrium-type area, this Loch Ness monster-inspired machine swims past her. We then enter into an underwater stealth segment where Aloy is sneaking past Snapmaws, all the while the soundtrack is playing a theme that features Jaws' iconic motif. The area is filled with data points telling of how Stanley Chen created a filtration system that revitalized Vegas during the Hot Zone crisis in the time of the Old Ones. Aloy eventually finds Poseidon, capturing the subordinate function, draining the water, and restoring light to the Vegas ruins. A few side quests later and you can marvel at the Vegas lights from the sky in Morlund's hot air balloon, while Stemmer puts on holiday-themed projections thanks to the relic ruins you have found upon your journey. At the start of 2021, I found myself experiencing that infamous feeling of open world fatigue, so I decided to take a break from any and all open worlds for the rest of the year. I don't know if this is as a result of taking a year off from open worlds and coming back refreshed, but I genuinely feel like Forbidden West's open world is the most engaging open world I've played in years. And yes, I acknowledge that that's a funny thing to say about a game that released alongside Elden Ring. A big problem I've had with open world game design over the past few years is the management of space between points of interest. I find it can be a bit draining to open up a map, find the next closest map marker 500 meters away in games where traversal isn't exciting, which leads to having to mindlessly travel down a pathway past empty hills for minutes until you reach your destination, pick up some resource or collectible, and then start the process all over again. While playing Forbidden West, however, I found that the nearest point of interest was very rarely over 200 meters away from wherever you were, so the journey between quests and collectibles and other activities was never boring. There were always fires to light nearby, beautiful views to discover, data points or green shine to find. You'll generally have to travel past or through machine sites requiring you to actively engage in combat or stealth, meaning that there are far fewer lulls in the minute-to-minute gameplay. Traversal is also something that's been enhanced since Zero Dawn. The addition of the shield wing is so welcome and well implemented. Underwater traversal is a delight. The added quality of life of having more climbable surfaces was needed considering the vastness of the West, and the increased number of mounts available adds to the overall variety in the experience. What ultimately makes this even better is what happens when you arrive at your destination. Guerrilla have added such diversity in the ways in which you engage with tall necks, cauldrons, relic ruins, quests, hunting grounds, that even seemingly predictable tasks have thoughtful variety in their design. Let's take tall necks as an example. Tall necks fulfill the role of your generic open world tower, where you climb to the top to scan the area for things to do. In Zero Dawn, climbing tall necks required you to find the spot in the environment where you could jump onto it, climb to the top, scan, enjoy the view, rappel down. In Frozen Wilds, they explored the idea of making this more complex by having to put the tall neck back together again before you could climb it. Forbidden West completely expands on that idea. The first tall neck requires you to power up a radio telescope, reposition it, climb it, and then get it to a point where you can jump to the nearby tall neck. The next one you find is completely unclimbable until you get the Sunwing override towards the back end of the game. Down in Vegas, the Still Sands tall neck needs to, antithetically, be shot down first before Aloy can then fix it and climb to the top. The Saltbite tall neck is only discovered once completing a cauldron that was busy repairing it. Further west, the stand of the Sentinel's tall neck requires a complex series of traversal puzzles to be solved across a large treetop settlement before you can reach the big guy. And for the one in San Francisco, you need to battle Glinthawks and sneak past Snapmaws to find the parts needed to repair it underwater. For a generic open world activity, a lot of thought was put into making scanning tall necks as engaging as possible. Cauldrons are once again fantastically fun, and while you might know where they are in the world, you do still have to search for entrance points and then figure out how to access the core to override them. There are, of course, loads of quests, and these rarely help to flesh out the lives of the people. There are several quests around the Daunt that paint a picture of an Oseram, Ulvund, ripping off his people and putting their lives at risk. Across the west, you encounter characters to help, like Dila and Boomer. There are quests that show the way of life of the Utaru and how they plant the seeds of the deceased to encourage new life. The Tenakth, who are inspired by the deeds of Task Force 10. The Quen, whose social structures mean only certain people can carry certain knowledge. Aloy goes on quests with her new allies, Zoe, Kotallo, and Elva, which deepen our understanding of not just the individuals, but the groups that they represent. And it's wonderful to return to base every now and then to check up on them, see what they're learning, and how they're interacting with one another. There are a lot of beautiful character moments with Aloy being quirky, sassy, or cutting a big ego down to size.
What, so you care now?
Yeah, no, I'm just making small talk.
Keep up the good work.
However, seeing the moments where Aloy bonds with people is rarely special.
I'm sorry he's gone. Yeah. So am I.
But my favorite non-combat related open world activity in Forbidden West has to be the Relic Ruin sites. I love large-scale environmental puzzles. Forbidden West's additional mechanics like the Pullcaster and the ability to destroy Firegleam rarely lend themselves towards puzzles. You then add extra complexity through climbing, elevators, boxes, vents, doors, carts, and these become sites that I actively look forward to finding and exploring. Combined with the fact that the relics have connected Old One's lore and the fact that you can give them to Stemmer to light up Vegas in different ways makes them very rewarding to engage with. While I was finding my time with Horizon to be having a lot of variety in the design of its activities, I also found myself to be engaging with its combat in a variety of ways. While I would generally keep my most potent hunter bow and explosive spike loadout equipped at all times, the other 4 slots of my weapon wheel were constantly being switched around. Since there wasn't a bow that was offering the Frost Purge Water damage combo I wanted, I would constantly be switching those 2 around in my inventory. Occasionally I would opt for the fun of using a Shredder Gauntlet, while other times that slot would be occupied by my Sharpshot bow for stealthy rebel headshots. While I would mostly keep my sling with adhesive and acid bombs equipped, sometimes I would switch it out for a harpoon ropecaster or a bolt blaster with shock ammo. If I was sneaking into combat, I could place a variety of traps and tripwires. This is certainly a game where you can equip a few weapons and forget about trying anything else, but I had so much fun experimenting with my loadout every couple of hours as I found something new or tried out a different combination that my combat experience never stagnated. And of course, I have to give a shout out to the machines. There's a greater variety of machines present in this game compared to its predecessor. I mean, they've got robot hippos. Like, how are you gonna top that? Except with maybe a Loch Ness monster? And this is needed considering the size of the game. Furthermore, each different machine has variants which mixes up how you interact with them, as Apex variants can't be overridden and some machine variants are weaker to different elemental attacks. Each one of these machines is stunningly realized. There is complex detail in each detachable piece. There are more heavy weapons to be shot off and used, including off my beloved Stalkers, adding even more weapon variety. They each have a host of different attacks and behaviors. It can also just be wonderful to see how much thought has gone into how different machines work within the ecosystem. These machines, while being able to engage in combat, do serve different roles, and so it's cool to see how those different functionalities are incorporated into their overall design. Horizon Forbidden West is one of those games where, when I wasn't playing it, I wished I was. It's a stunning, beautifully lit world, lush with detail. From the complexity of the lumbering process at Chainscrape, to the stunning vistas, to the way in which an overridden Sunwing can show you it all. From the disparate inhabitants of the world, to the AI-designed ecosystem that surrounds them. From the sound design, to the way in which characters animate and move during conversations. From the voice work,
That was sneaky of you, patching in Varl and Aaron to our conversation.
I am pleased you accepted their help.
to the impeccable music. From the depth of the lore, all the way down to the way in which Aloy's forehead wrinkles when she frowns. Horizon Forbidden West is a game that was clearly made with love, and one that I loved playing.
This delve was a story for the ages. All thanks to you.